Howdy, and welcome back to the Ineligibles podcast. My name is Will Stone at Will Stone CFB on Twitter. You can subscribe to this podcast on YouTube, the Ineligibles podcast. You can follow us on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook. Everything is either at Ineligible Pod or at the Ineligibles podcast. YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcast, all that good stuff. Check out Good Bull Hunting, goodbullhunting.com, at GB Hunting on Twitter. And speaking of, we have none other than the managing editor of Good Bull Hunting, Mr. Robert Behrens, with us today. Robert, how's it going?
Howdy. It's going great, man. We're sitting here 3 days before the season, so it doesn't get better than this.
Yeah, I think you had a tweet that I kind of piled on with last week to where this may be the best time of the year because you just have you know so much hope, and hope springs
Yeah.
eternal every August.
No one has been proven wrong yet.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah.
As of right now, maybe the only time all year that everyone is right, and yeah, things can change pretty quick. A&M, luckily, you know, hopefully, kind of eases into this thing. Same cannot be said for our opponents this year. Very excited to watch some of those games this weekend, which we'll get to that towards the end. But just kind of off the top, it's been a while since we've had you on, and it's been a while, since the end of last season, and things got to a pretty good point. It's around October, and then beating LSU, going 7-1. Obviously things fizzled out. We've got new players, we've got guys coming back, we've got the coaching staff pretty well intact. A couple of new analysts, which may be important. Just overall, I mean, I know you know, just in talking to you offline and some of our prediction that our prediction article that we had last week. I know you are tempering things a little bit, but I know deep down you're just you're wanting to pour a big old glass of Kool-Aid, aren't you?
100%. Yeah, I'm just like trying to protect myself from myself.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, because I could sit here and tell you, look, the year that we went 5-7, I predicted us to go 12-0 that year. The year that I think the next year when we went 7-5, I think, I think I think we were going to be 8-4 or 10-2. So I have had my fair share of wildly overestimating this team. So I'm trying to take what I actually think and then saying, okay, whatever it is you think, dial that down like a notch. Just because there's going to be injuries that happen, there's going to be guys or position groups that don't perform as well as you think they do. And now, granted, like I'm sure that as soon as the season kicks off and as soon as things like show hints of going well, I will be more than happy to like abandon all of that cautious skepticism, and just jump in and bathe in the Kool-Aid, as you say.
Oh yeah, which I think we talked last year going into Notre Dame to where like that was like it was kind of a swing game, but it wasn't a must win, but it was just there was so much hype around it. It was college game day. It was a new coaching staff. You had some big name transfers. You thought you had your quarterback healthy, and then just a totally flat performance, especially from the offense in that one. And then we kind of tamp things down a little bit, and we're like, okay, like it's gonna be one of them years. And then you go 7 straight wins, and you beat LSU. You actually win a big game that's televised nationally that everyone's watching, and we're like, okay, we're back in it. We're 7-1. We're in the freaking driver's seat for the conference. Nobody saw that coming. And then next week you go into a buzzsaw in South Carolina, and things kind of just don't go well the rest of the year. So it's
Yeah, I mean, it's certainly one of the more heartbreaking finishes to a season for A&M. Certainly not even an unprecedented one, though. In fact, you can go back to, 2016 is the one that sticks out in my mind, where A&M was kind of in a similar spot, where that year, like when the first playoff rankings came out, A&M was number 4. A&M was in the playoff. and then proceeded to like, lose in Starkville, lose at home to Ole Miss, and ended up losing the Texas Bowl to K State to finish out the year. And yeah, or you look at 2020, where not necessarily where the team faltered down the stretch, but you get the gut punch of getting left out of the playoff.
Yeah.
And so I
Well,
think,
that
and look, there are certainly Aggies that are a lot more jaded than I am. I still skew towards the positive outlook, but I also don't fault anybody who at this point says, like, I don't care how many talking points you give me of why this team is going to be better, why the team is going to be different. Until I see it, I'm going to have a hard time believing it. And I think
yeah,
that's a pretty fair stance.
it is, and I think it's something that we've talked about, on here, and kind of all, all off season. Like if you're in this space, if you're in the A&M, you know, universe of things, the fan base is not in a good place. Like our mental health as a fan base is not great right now,
No.
due to several factors. But for pretty much ever since losing the World Series to Tennessee, everything since then has been a mistake. But except with the exception of LSU, and I think generally, I like this coaching staff. I like Elko a lot. I think he's pretty sharp. I think his recruiting has picked up and been pretty impressive. But it's I try to put myself back in my own shoes from 8 9 months ago and saying, hey, we're not going to do this again, and get built up. And so even though I like a lot of parts of this team, I'm still trying to you know keep keep things level. And I
Yeah.
like in our prediction, I tried to I guess we can go ahead. Well, I'll go ahead and just say mine, but I picked 10-2 the last 2 years, and I believed it. And honestly, both years you kind of had a shot at it. I think in 23 maybe less so, but you were right there with Alabama. You should have won that one. Tennessee was just an incredibly ugly mess of a football game. And then Ole Miss, I think you had a chance to go to overtime, and then we missed a field goal. And you know, LSU, Miami, we kind of got blown out in those. But yeah, and then last year, I mean, heck, if you told me we're 7-1 going into the home stretch, I'm like, oh, like well, we're in the playoff, and
Yeah. Yeah.
uh, and some teams like South Carolina were better than we expected, and they had a great defense, and it just that just kind of sucked. It's just the way it turned out. But I try to not. I didn't want to not pick 10-2 just for the hell of it, or like just for the sake of, oh, I can't do it 3 years in a row. And I tried to be as honest as I could. But as much as I like this team, there's still that aspect of I need to see it for myself and
Yeah.
see that this coaching staff has pulled things together, and the offense is clicking, the defense is wrapping up and tackling and not blowing coverages. I've got to see that for myself against the better teams that we play before I really go all in and say, hey, this is a playoff team. But kind of on that note, I was messaging you earlier about this, but several people in the media, which the media is, they're not huge fans of us because we make them look silly sometimes. Like Desmond Howard picking us in the playoff. Every offseason, someone's got A&M like, oh, like that's the dark horse. That's they're gonna make the SEC championship, or they're gonna make the playoff, and like this is the year they're gonna break through. And then we really haven't done that. I thought early on this offseason it was very quiet on the A&M side. Everything was about DJ Lagway, Lenore Sellers, Arch Manning, even guys like Austin Simmons at Ole Miss, who I'm a fan of. All these other quarterbacks and other teams get more kind of hype and people talking about them that A&M got earlier in the year. However, down the stretch here, as things get closer and people start digging in, looking at schedules, looking at rosters, who's coming back. Um, Several folks have picked us to make the playoff, the 12-team playoff. I've got a list, and it's not exhaustive, but these are just the handful of folks that have either put us in the playoff or talked very highly about A&M. Stuart Mandel had us at 6 in his playoff bracket, which I mean, we're doing freaking backflips if that's the case. I believe Ralph Russo had us in there in that 10 to 12 range. Alyssa Lang tweeted today she thinks we're a playoff team. Bill Connolly has been on a couple podcasts here lately, and he's like, "Yeah, I didn't expect it, but I don't see very many holes with the A&M roster. I think they could be pretty good." And then Ty Hildenbrand and JD Piquel also had us in their playoff bracket. So, does that make you more nervous? Like, would you rather us just be totally under the radar going in?
Um, Honestly, at this point, I feel like we've seen both sides of it, and I don't. I mean, ultimately, I don't think a lot of that matters a whole bunch. I think
Sure.
it's all just for fun for all of us to talk about. But I don't think we're more likely to win the playoff if people are doubting us going in necessarily. Now, if it was like a universal chorus across the board of everyone just singing the praises of how good we're going to be, kind of like what you're seeing with Texas, I feel like that's the situation where you open up the possibility of kind of guys reading their clippings a little bit more. But for A&M, like you said, there's a handful of folks out there, and it is kind of that drumbeat is growing louder. But it's not just this tidal wave of positivity necessarily. I think there's still a lot of the national folks who are justifiably hesitant to buy in on A&M because maybe they've done that in the past um, and they've seen it not work out very well for them. And to me, that's the weird thing because it's so hard to separate the two because I mean, and certainly as a fan, I absolutely hold past like A&M failures against what I think of the current team, even though I know that makes so little sense because, like for almost all of that I'm talking about, this coaching staff wasn't here, save maybe for Mike Elko as a coordinator. Like these players weren't here. And even for the collapse at the end of the season last year, it was still like year one of a new staff with guys learning a new scheme, with you're still kind of building your roster the way you want it to. And so I guess my point is that I totally see, kind of what Bill Connolly says, that you look at this roster and you say, man, like there's a lot of reasons why this team could really take a step up from what they were last year. Um, and that's the hard part, right now in this moment, it's so tantalizingly close. And you've already talked so much about it over the past 8 months. Like you're just so ready to start finding out what parts of that are true, what parts aren't, and just how this team is going to come together for this year.
Yeah, I'm with you on that, and I think like something that I thought about here the past couple days as I've kind of as it's been getting closer is I think in the especially with the 12-team playoff, that opens up so many more chances for a team like A&M to get in there and break through. But I think obviously in the SEC, I think the top 3 or 4, well at least the top 3 with Texas, Bama, and Georgia. Those teams right now are going to be competing for a playoff spot every single year. I think last year you saw some teams kind of cycling up, like Ole Miss, like Tennessee, who did make it, South Carolina, who should have made it had they held on to a couple of other and a couple of their losses. And now those teams have lost a lot. Like obviously Texas, Bama, Georgia, they're still picked to be up there. LSU, people are kind of split on them, but they're kind of, can they be a team that cycles up? And then A&M is in that tier with them where I think, is this their year where they got the experience, they've got, you know, plenty of talent. But I think the experience is the big part. And like the team
Mhm.
last year was good. It wasn't great, but so many guys came back, and you've got guys that were young last year that are older. You got good transfers. You got better receivers. Um, and not that I think like even if A&M makes it, I'm not going to say oh like you know we're freaking back and like we're going to make it every year. But like I could easily see a scenario where this is it's very cyclical in that middle class of the SEC right now, and obviously we want to get to the top and we want to be you know one of those teams that just reloads every year. But for the time being, we don't really need to reload. Like we already got so much back that we can be, if Tennessee last year made it, I like this A&M team better than I like last year's Tennessee team,
Yeah,
and then,
I agree.
you know, um, but some of the other teams kind of in that range are, a team like Florida, great looking quarterback prospect, health concerns, but a good offensive line, some guys back on defense, a very tough schedule. Auburn should be in that tier as well with their receiving core and the guys they have back. But what does that quarterback spot look like for them? And I think and those are two teams A&M plays. That's head to head. You're trying to like you need to beat those two teams to give yourself any shot to get to the playoff. But I think when you look at the schedule, I think if Notre Dame was not on the schedule, if it was Nebraska or NC State or somebody, then I think we have more people saying, hey, this is a playoff team for sure because they're probably going to sweep in the non-conference.
Yeah, yeah. And I will say, you've heard so much about there's kind of the big three road games everyone circles with Notre Dame, LSU, and then finishing the season with Texas. I think the bigger indicator of A&M season is going to be not necessarily those three games, but kind of that middle chunk that you alluded to just now between Florida, South Carolina, Auburn, and Mizzou. I would throw in there as well,
Yeah.
because I think it's more about if you can go 4-0 in those games, then that sets you up well. Where maybe you lose the big three, but if you run the table the rest of the way, you're still putting yourself in a pretty good spot. And then if you're able to, maybe you win at Notre Dame or you win in Death Valley. Then all of a sudden that 10 win mark starts looking pretty darn attainable.
Yeah, and I think I like the way it sets up. I think I like getting those middle tier teams, like like teams that are kind of in the same weight class. I like getting them at home.
Yeah.
Maybe if our three toughest games, if they are all on the road, you know, I think there's a shot you can steal one of them. But like if that's the case, then your other away game is like Arkansas, which I'm sure that'll be tough. But who knows what the coaching situation looks like as that kind of gets later into the year. And then Missouri, who I respect their coaching staff quite a bit, and I think that's maybe the last game that we have in that stretch away from Kyle Field, which is going to be tough. But I like getting a team like Auburn and a young quarterback like Lagway, as talented as he is. He threw some picks last year. I think he threw more than Marcel, and probably less in less action than Marcel had. Getting those games at Kyle Field with this crowd and fan base, and the way that this team can play with their physicality, it sets up well. I think I mentioned last week too, but just to reiterate, those two in particular set up well by how they lead up. Like we have Notre Dame, which is going to be a brawl in a beating of a game, but then we get a bye week, and during that bye week, Auburn goes to Oklahoma, which is a physical team, and then comes to Kyle Field the next week. So that's tough. In between, we get Mississippi State, and then Florida's got a gauntlet of like LSU, Texas, I think Miami. I know they play Texas right before they play us, which is that's going to be difficult for them. But I don't know. There's little kind of keys and nuggets in the schedule that kind of favor us a little bit, but you still have to go do it. But to kind of wrap up that point, and I spoke about this a little bit last week, but to bring that all together, this I know that this fan base wants it. Like they want it so badly. This is
Oh my
the most
goodness.
passionate. Like we had one good year and spent $500 million on a stadium, back in 2012.
Yeah.
So it's which is kind of my question in today's and it's a stadium of 110,000 that we're filling up, pretty much every single Saturday. If A&M makes the playoff this year, like what could that do for this program? Just not for the, like obviously for the mental health of our fans, it'd be like Nirvana.
Yeah.
But just from a program standpoint, like I'm such a believer in, we need to walk before we run, and like we're crawling right now, and a program like Penn State has, like I'm sure they're frustrated, but they're walking. They've been walking for a while, and they want to run. We need to go from one step to the next. And like if this team makes the playoff this year, like in your mind, like how does that affect this program?
I think it just is that first step in the potential for having a like long term sustainably good program. Because yeah, we've seen A&M have a peak year here and there, but we've also seen those valleys as well. And I think especially, I always go back to recruiting. That right now this staff is recruiting very highly. They're looking at probably wrapping up a top 10 class for 2026 and a good spot to keep doing that in 2027. It sounds like. Um, but at some point, you're not a new coaching staff anymore, and so you can't keep selling the future and the promise of what you're gonna do. You're gonna have to start selling what have we done. And so to have, whether it's a playoff appearance or it's getting to an SEC championship game, to have something tangible to say, this is what we've done to this place that makes us different than what this place was before. Because I just think at some point recruits will stop buying the hype. If you're in year 5 and you haven't done anything better than win 8 or 9 games. And I think from a fan perspective as well, and that funnels into fundraising and NIL and facilities. That's just that constant arms race. That's one thing that I think we will probably see a comeback, because when NIL launched, everyone kind of said, "Oh, like the facilities arms race is dead because no one's going to put all their money into a building when they could be just buying this recruit." And certainly, I don't think we're fully out of the woods there yet by any means. But I think with entering kind of the revenue share era, where it seems like a lot more that NIL actually is going to have some teeth behind being regulated and being authentic, I think you may see a shift back towards where a lot of the NIL from school to school is going to be relatively comparable. And it goes back to, okay, what else can you give me? Like, how nice is your facilities? Like, what kind of services and programs do you have? And all of that takes money. And it's a lot easier to get that money when you're winning a lot of games.
Yeah, for sure. And I think like even I agree with that. And I think A&M is in a pretty, like they position themselves very well with, like they already got the new indoor facility, which is the cream of the crop in the country.
Well, it was a lot of ways. I mean, I think it was somewhat accidental, but they
I
started
think it was.
that centennial campaign just a couple months before NIL got legalized. So they were one of the last big like wholesale, like facilities expansions that you saw. And then it's kind of gone dark. You've seen places they'll renovate existing spaces, but outside of, obviously Texas is in the middle of building a new pretty massive indoor facility, but you don't see nearly as much of that as you did 5-10 years ago.
Yeah, and I listened to some of the Texas kickoff, and they were talking to Trev Alberts, and they made a good point. Back in 2013 and 14, when we redid Kyle Field, and we still have that debt, we're still paying it off, but I think the total was about $500 million. And to do that today, it would be closer to $3 billion to get that
gosh.
done. Just because of, obviously inflation, just other factors. And, I think to put it in NFL terms, like Cowboy Stadium in 2010 was 1 billion. And then SoFi, which is a different kind of stadium, was like $4.5 billion. Like it was just insane, the increase in that cost. And now like, we're sitting here like we don't need to do a whole brand new stadium. Like we don't need another $500 million to get us in, to upgrade our facilities. And sure, they got to upkeep it and that sort of stuff too. But I don't know, in terms of where we're at on that front. I think we're pretty, it's pretty favorable. But
Yeah.
to
Yeah. So
kind of go back to
Kyle Field's like the single family home that you bought in like 2013 and then refinanced for a sub 3% interest rate.
you got
Like
just
you can
crazy
never
equity.
leave. Yeah. Yeah.
But it's interesting to think about the last two coaching staffs, and I guess even the last three, to some extent, with Sherman's season in 2010. They all had a like more or less of a breakthrough season. Like obviously Sumlin, first season right out of the gate, you win the Heisman, you win 11 games, which is just incredible. And then recruiting did pick up because like we did not have a super talented team from a stars and recruiting perspective back then. Like we were like under the 50% blue chip ratio, and then we got above it for a little bit, and then we went back under, and then Jimbo got us. We're way above it now, but Sumlin couldn't capitalize on all those beneficial things with recruiting and just kind of the momentum. And then Jimbo, it's first year was good, second year really tough schedule, and then third year you are one spot out of the playoff, and even though it's COVID, you finish number 5. The fans are excited again. We're like, hey, going into 2021, like this is going to be it. And then it even got extended because of the recruiting of the 22 class. Like that was the like what we were building towards, and then obviously things just crumbled, and whatever the opposite of capitalizing is what that coaching staff did. So
they, they lowercased it.
yeah,
Yeah.
so I mean, if
It was like
e- e-
subscript. But
yeah, there you go. So even like this coaching staff, like this is a really good roster, and they need to go out and show that they're kind of worth their salt and win. I think even if you win 9, most folks are happy with that. If you win 10, we're through the roof. The money's flowing in. That's a playoff appearance. Probably, could even be at Kyle Field, which would be amazing. But I and not to get roped in or to throw Elko in with those other coaches, but I kind of trust him a little bit better to manage that success and to build, to take the next step and not have just the one good year where, oh, you've got 5 seniors on the O line, you go win a bunch of games and then you're bad after that. So I don't know. I'm sure I know for a fact we said the same thing with the last two coaching staffs. We were like, oh, like this is great. They're gonna take us to the next level, and then it just didn't happen. So
yeah, it does feel like Elko he at least says the right things as far as he seems well equipped to succeed in kind of the modern era of college football, as far as he acknowledges the need for having like that. Basically, he's like the CEO of a company almost, rather than just a ball coach. It's like there's a reason that he brought in a GM. Yeah, he brought in a lot more folks for for scouting. So he at least presents himself in a way that it feels like he's aware of all those competing priorities and needs that certainly I think Jimbo probably struggled with in his tenure. But yeah, to your point, it's so hard because people wanted to. They could go back and pull tons of receipts on me being super confident that of what Jimbo was going to do, making tons of excuses for when those teams weren't living up to expectations.
yeah,
And probably even the same thing going back to someone as well. So,
yeah,
but but that part of that too is just, the part of why people love college football is the unpredictability of it. And, it's there's nobody out there that's just like leaning back in their chair with 100% hit rate on their predictions. And most of us,
yeah.
it's probably, we're lucky if it's above 60%. And so you kind of, you look dumb until you get proven right. I mean, because look, I know a lot of Longhorn fans that were very lukewarm about hiring Steve Sarkisian 4 years ago, and
It was
that's
it was
working out
it,
pretty
it,
well
it
for
was
him.
it was urban or bust.
Yeah, yeah. I
Like
mean,
they
and,
all like
I mean that was like a lot of people said like firing Tom Herman, hiring Steve Sarkisian like lateral move,
yeah.
which today seems ridiculous. But
Yeah.
I mean, but that's what it felt like at the time.
Yeah, and he's done a great job of like
He's okay. He's
obviously
all right. You know,
but like hiring the coaches, player development, scouting, all that kind of stuff. Those are some things that it's why I'm so curious for this season, which we can kind of segue into this year's roster. Is there's some guys on here, especially at the receiver position, to where everyone in that room is someone he picked, and
yeah,
there's no leftovers, and that's even the recruits, especially for the transfers. These second year guys that people are really excited about. I'm so interested to see, and like obviously, I think his first full recruiting class, which are this year's true freshmen, I think, especially on defense, I think I'm really excited about those guys. And then obviously, I think there's some guys on offense as well, kind of at each position that I think could speak to his mettle as a evaluator, and that sort of thing. But so this year's team, I know it's kind of been talked to death, so we won't go over every single position, but just kind of high level. I know, like for me, I'm thrilled about the offensive line and the running backs. Le'Veon, you know, he says he's healthy. I'm excited to see him out there, see how he does. I'm excited to see a healthy Reuben Owens, and then a healthy, Amari and EJ Smith, who have been getting some rave reviews as well. But to me, it's this receiver position. I think that's the biggest thing. Is what we all sat here last year and said, if there is like the biggest weakness on this team is the receiver spot, and you could kind of squint and see, well, if everything goes perfect, Noah Thomas is talented and is great in one-on-one matchups. We've seen it from Moose, we just don't really know, and we have a freshman Terry Bussey who just got here, and then we moved into receiver, and we think,
yeah.
like best case
He'll
scenario,
be
he's
fine.
like,
He'll be
yeah,
fine.
so like, and that's how it played out. Like we weren't very good at receiver last year, and I'd be remiss, huge shout out to Jade Walker. Seems like just a great kid, easy guy to root for. Blocked a punt against Texas, blocked one against Miami a couple years ago, made the Bears roster. Has the greatest touchdown celebration
Yeah.
maybe ever. But a big tip of the cap to him. But if there's a spot that I'm circling on this roster that's a big jump from last year, I think it could be just a complete 180 at the receiver spot.
Yeah, I mean, it certainly, we all hope so, because of what that could do for this offense. But it certainly seems like we've heard that cadence of that coming not only from the media members attending practice, but you're hearing it from players and coaches, which I feel like that doesn't always happen that often because like if you talk about how much better the room is this year, it automatically carries the implication that last year it wasn't that great. And and players never want to like openly disparage each other for the most part. But yeah, guys have not been shy about saying how much better it's going to be this year. So to me, I think that's telling. Even though we haven't seen Casey Concepcion, we haven't seen Mario Craver in an A&M uniform do a darn thing other than running some drills in the first 15, 20 minutes of practice.
Those drills look pretty good though.
Oh, they did. or even like Ashton Bethel Roman, like we've heard tons of hype around him,
Yeah.
um, even though he was here last year and barely saw the field. Um, so I guess my point is that there's tons of kind of steam around it, smoke around it, but I guess we'll see. I,
You
I
got
just,
you got to see it. You got to see it.
yeah, for sure.
Um,
Yeah, and Concepcion in particular, it's like people were talking about him about like he's Christian Kirk over there,
yeah,
um, and he had a great freshman year, and then a kind of not as great sophomore year. So it's it wasn't all just like roses
yeah,
at his previous stop even. So I mean, but I do agree that's one of the positions where there is the biggest potential for improvement, and also just one of the ones that if it does pan out, that that can just do wonders for what this offense is and what this offense can do. Because I mean, it's not rocket science to say that if you have an effective passing game, not only just is that beneficial because you're moving the ball downfield, but then what that does for what should already be a dominant running game, it
exactly.
makes you a very, very hard offense to defend.
Yeah. Um, I guess we'll kind of stop there because if we go too far, then I'm going to mess up my next two little
Okay.
segments here. So, um, on this one, I'll go first because we kind of just brought him up a little bit, but it's a guy I'm excited to talk about. But actually, I'll let you go first in case you want to steal the same guy. But is there a player like I wrote down a plant your flag player, a stand on the table and say, hey, this guy is different. He's he is that good. Maybe we haven't seen it yet, and maybe we have. But you're saying, hey, I'm planting my flag and saying this player at A&M is going to have a huge year.
I feel like this is going to be a little bit of a chalk one, but I'm going to say Cassius Howell,
Yeah,
just because we saw him in flashes last year, and then seeing him against USC in that bowl game. He just seemed like he looked like the best player on the field when he was out there. And he's a guy that has the experience. Obviously, a very veteran player, both here and at his previous stop. I'm blanking on where he even was before.
I
He was
think
in the
Bowling
MAC,
Green.
right? Bowling Green.
Yeah,
That's right. Yeah. Like led the conference in sacks there, um, and honestly, it just passes the eye test of like you just see that guy and you're like, yeah, that looks like what a defensive end should look like.
yeah,
So just checks a lot of boxes, and I think poised for a great year. And part of that I think is going to come on the back of um, maybe the secondary being a little bit improved as well, and that helping out that pass rush a whole lot more than it did last season.
yeah, yeah. I'm I'm with you 100% on Cassius Al. Just the way he ended, like the way he played down the stretch last season. I remember in the USC game, like the plays he was making. I was like, look, he may not be preseason All SEC because he's not a huge name and he plays for A&M. So he probably won't make one of the preseason media teams. But I'm telling you right now, if I'm picking a guy that's not, like Le'Veon Moss or, or Trey Zoon or someone, or like one of the more known names, I'm picking Cassius Al. I think he's in for a massive year and could play his way into not just SEC honors, but a decently high draft pick as well next season.
Yeah,
But the guy I'm going to plant my flag on, just it it is from there's some film there, and we saw it last season a little bit, albeit at a different place. But just from those camp videos, there's sometimes you can just tell just by looking at a player, and you're like, this guy is different from what we've had. And to me, it's Mario Craver. Like, I know that like I'm a huge fan of Concepcion, and he gets a lot of love. I think he probably leads the team in targets and all the major receiving categories. I think Reed will look to him a lot. But man, Craver is he's just it's not just the deep speed, but you can kind of see the quickness and the suddenness that he moves with.
he's twitchy.
He's switched up, man, and
Yeah.
like in and out of his breaks. Like this dude's going to create separation and make some big plays. And um, I think like he's not like an underrated player. I think he's getting plenty of hype, but with KC being like the known commodity, and then kind of the surging Ashton Bethel Roman who's getting a lot of hype, which love to hear that. But I think to go along with him, I think Craver is just a special player. I mean, he burned Georgia for like a 70-yard touchdown last year. He had Will Lee, in the freaking in a freaking blender when we played them last year, and yeah, he's my guy I'm watching. I can't wait to watch him on Saturday.
Yeah, and I would say I would. You made me think of this just now. When was the last time A&M had what you would consider like two legitimate receiving threats? Because it seems like the past several seasons, it's always been we've had at best like one main guy, and then past that, it was kind of just
And
a
we barely even
cast
had
of
a main guy.
characters. Well, yeah, no, yeah, we haven't had 1,000 yard receiver in eons.
Yeah,
But it's been like you had last year. It was Noah Thomas. I think
yeah.
there's been years where um, it was Evan Stewart or it was Anaya Smith. But I mean, I would say like in my mind, the thing I go back to like maybe like Christian Kirk, Josh Reynolds.
Yeah, I think I think for sure them. I think that was, yeah, like 2016. They had
Yeah,
a pretty good year. Both of them did. Um, you could make a case for 2017, even though the team wasn't very good. You still had Kirk and Damian Ratley played very well that year.
mm,
But like it wasn't, like I think he played his way into a draft spot after being kind of under the radar. But the last time you had like two true like, hey, like teams are planning for these two guys, I think
right.
it was
Yeah,
Kirk.
guys that the other teams are like scared of like this
Yeah,
guy's gonna ruin our day if we don't
yeah,
take
yeah.
care of business.
It's got to be Kirk and Josh, and they were two very different players. Like we had
Yeah,
a deep threat in Josh, and for some of Trevor Knight's faults, throwing the football, he throws a hell of a fade route, and he has some great connections with
yeah,
with Josh Reynolds on some deep shots. So, and then Kirk was Kirk. Like he was just was great in the slot and explosive and just a playmaker. But no, it's been a while since we since we had that. And I think I think you got three guys here that could all have pretty good pretty good years and pretty good ability. And then who knows, kind of going into my next one, if there's an X factor for you on offense and defense, I'll go ahead and say mine while we're on this topic. But I think my X factor on offense is Terry Bussey. 5-star prospect, had had blazing speed in high school, ran a 10.4 100 meter, but played at a small school and just did everything. He didn't have he wasn't playing receiver his whole life like a guy like Concepcion or Craver may have. He was, quarterback and safety or running back and, like he just kind of did everything for that team. And, he gets here late and he's injured and they're like, hey, you're a corner. And they're like, actually, we need you on offense. And then I think he even got banged up during the season last year. I think he missed maybe like Mississippi State and a couple other games. But he had moments, and you know, I think I think our fan base is impatient with 5 stars, which to a degree I get it. But with a guy that you kind of know, hey, like he's a 5-star athlete, not a 5-star receiver, which is
yeah,
what he was listed as. So I'm willing to give him a little bit of grace there and let him kind of, get up to speed. Even not being here in the spring last year was a huge deal. So sounds like he's, even made a push a little bit to, he's like, hey, like don't forget about me now. Like I know these other guys are good, but I think he'll get plenty of snaps, and he may be a guy to where I think they did some interesting things last year with him, like motioning into the backfield and running wheel routes, and I think he's probably works in the return game as well. But if there's a guy that could take it, to take the receiver group from very good to like, hey, this is one of the best in the conference. It's if Terry Bussey shows up and plays like he's able to play.
yeah. And I think one thing that's it's telling about maybe the role that they envision for him is you look at that depth chart that came out yesterday, and of course that thing was littered with co-starters, almost across the board. But Bussey was listed as a co-starter at two different wide receiver positions, and also in the return game. So it kind of meshes with some of the stuff we've heard that, he's not going to be a guy that he just goes and lines up outside every play and that's just where he is. I think they're going to
Hmm.
want to use him in a variety of ways, just try to find the creative ways to get him the ball in open space and let him go. So if they can do that effectively, and if he can, um, I don't even think it's about him like developing as an athlete. Like you said, it's just having confidence in knowing the offense so that they can throw him out there in whatever role and trust that he knows what he's doing and he's going to be able to execute the play.
And I think a lot of these guys are pretty similar in their build, and like
Yeah,
you've got some skinny fast guys, which is a great thing to have. He's kind of a bigger bodied guy. He's not tall. You know, he's not 6'6" Noah Thomas, but he's maybe more physical at the point of the catch than the other guys are. Like the other guys are going to get by, in case he can get in there and make some contested grabs. But I think guys like Bethel Roman and Craver are going to really thrive on the separation and that kind of thing. But a guy like Bussy, like the first play against Texas, he goes up and gets it. I think against Jade Barron, who was a
yeah,
first round pick. So yeah, I think having that, and then obviously what he can do, in just kind of creative ways, on offense. I think it's a different kind of skill set, and I think it's just another dimension that the offense could have when you look at, hey, we have, you know, we think our running game is going to be pretty good. Our quarterback can run and distribute the ball pretty well. And we got some deep threats and yak guys, but then we have this X factor guy to where you don't know what he's going to do. He could be a running back, he could be slot, he could be, jet sweep guy or whatever else, and
yeah. I
or
mean,
just
I think the comps there is you look at, and I think look at the NFL. I think Debo Samuel,
yeah,
is a guy similar build as well.
yeah,
That I don't for years he was a cheat code in fantasy because he was a wide receiver that would also get like 5 to 7 carries a game.
right,
And then from A&M perspective, I think he's a more athletic Anais Smith, um,
yeah.
guy that has that stockier build that's a little bit more physical that you can kind of use wherever you want to.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, for I think for me on that front, I'm gonna kind of cheat the question slightly, but I'm gonna go with a position group that I think fits that bill, and it's gonna be the tight end room.
Okay.
Um,
I like that.
just because when you look at what Colin Klein did at Kansas State, the tight ends were so involved in that offense, and that's I think something that maybe surprised everybody a little bit last year was um, kind of, I guess the lack of tight end production on that offense a season ago. Um, but I feel like that room has been upgraded. Obviously, you have Theo Orstrom, who has been in the program now feels like 5 years, but he's kind of just another year older, another year more developed, another year more comfortable. But then bringing in kind of the two opposite ends of the spectrum, where you have Nate Berkacher coming in from Nebraska, who seems like very much was brought in initially as a blocking tight end, but it seems like they may think they can use him a little bit more in a pass catching role as well. Um, and then bringing in Amari Niblack from Texas, who is a lot more of that, receiving tight end, bordering on maybe just a big receiver.
Right.
To the point that he's actually worked with receivers in a lot of the drills you've seen in fall camp. Um, and so I think, and once again, all three of those guys listed as co-starters on the depth chart. So I think every reason to expect that we're not going to see just one of them out there. But if they can utilize those guys, I think the way that Colin Klein wants to utilize that tight end position, it's just another element of that offense that, the more looks you give a defense, the more things they have to pay attention to and defend. And,
Yeah.
it makes it that much harder to, stop.
Well, and it's actually it's a great point. Is if you only got a guy or two that can really threaten, then that's who coaches are going to focus on when they're in their game prep. But if you've got we talked about several guys here, but if they're all hits, like if they're all able to stress the defense in their own way. That adds a lot of stress to the coaches of knowing like, hey, like 84's on the field, we need to be aware of this, or like or Bussey's out there and too tight. Like there's just so many different things, and I think Colin Klein. I'm curious to see like obviously just the offense, but how he's got a lot of chess pieces here, and I want to see how he can use them. I think a big thing you said is the blocking at tight end. It's it's probably one of the more underrated parts of an offense, especially in college. I said this last week, but I'll say it again because I just love talking about it. I watched the Ohio State Notre Dame championship game, and a guy that for Ohio State that no one's talked about. I've never heard his name before. I had to go look him up, and I can't even pronounce it right because it's like a Czech or Polish name. But he's number 89 tight end. It's like Kaczmarek or Kaczmarek. Blocked his tail off, like was blocking like Notre Dame's defensive ends who are really good players. And like, dude, like that's what this offense needs right there, especially short yardage. We need a guy like Berkature to come in and be that guy, who's just a hand in the dirt, physical presence, who can get out there and really run block. And I think he is a decent pass catcher as well. But and Theo's got the physical ability. I think
Yeah.
you know, he's even said it in interviews. He was like, yeah, like in Sweden, like I played wide receiver. Like everyone was smaller than I was. I just went up and just caught the ball over him. But like obviously he's very physically gifted. He could probably block, as well. And if he makes an improvement there, I think that's a big deal. But on defense, there's a handful of guys you can pick. I'm torn between two, but I'm gonna take the other 5-star that really needs to make a big jump. If this guy makes a big jump, I think it changes the whole equation on defense, and that's David Hicks. If because everyone's kind of talking now like, oh, like which is it's so weird after 8 years in a row of having a good defensive line. Everyone's like, the defensive line might be bad, like we don't know. And like I think it'll be fine. I think it'll be good even, but I think there is a little bit of unknown with I think you feel pretty good about Cash. You feel pretty good about Regis, and I think you could probably feel good about Onyedem and maybe the rest are unknowns. Like personally, I like Deion Hayes. I like Rylan Kennedy, and Marco Jones has a bright future here. But DJ Hicks so far has been serviceable. He's been good. He's had some bright moments, but as a former 5-star product in his junior season. This is a big year for him, and I'm sure he's got NFL aspirations, whether it be this coming year or the next. And it's go time for him. And I think in terms of run defense, which I think our back seven plays a factor there as well in angles and gaps and wrapping up and tackling. But if you can get a Hoss, like a McKinley Jackson, Bobby Brown, even different kind of player, but a Justin Matabike. If you can get that kind of play out of Hicks, that's such a huge thing for your defense, and will, I think just vastly increase the odds that you put a top quality unit on that side of the ball this year.
Yeah, I tend to agree, and I think if the defensive line is going to struggle, it would be up the middle. I'm a little bit more comfortable with the defensive ends than I am defensive tackles on the interior. So 100% on with you on that one. But yeah, if Hicks lives up to the hype and he really kind of levels up, that's a game changer for that defense. I would say the one that I would go with is Des Ricks.
Yeah.
Simply because obviously that secondary very much maligned a season ago. But you bring back, I think everyone's very comfortable with Will Lee as being kind of the primary lockdown corner. You get Tyreek Chappelle back at nickel, which we've heard so much about what a huge loss that was last year when he went down after 2 games. So I think the big question mark on that front is still who that corner on the other side of the field is going to be. So we've heard a lot about either Des Ricks, also Julio Humphrey, transferring in from Georgia. But it kind of feels like we've heard a lot from the coaches just in the past week really praising Ricks and the strides he's taken, and even kind of like almost apologizing that he had to play so much last year because they straight up admitted that like he was too young and he wasn't ready for it. And so, like, to me, that kind of clues you into that, that once again, that carries the implication that if he wasn't ready now and they're apologizing that he had to do it then, they're saying, but now he is ready.
Right.
Um, and that's a guy, obviously, once again, former 5-star, came here from Alabama after his freshman year. So if he can fulfill that potential and be another, rock solid SEC caliber corner, in addition to those other guys, I think I that can just work wonders for what this defense is able to do. Because I think secondary, maybe even more than defensive line or any other, it's like if you have one weak spot, teams just abuse it. Because a lot of times like there's only so much help you can do out there on receivers, and so really, really hopeful that he's a guy that can step up. So I think that would make a huge difference.
Yeah, I think to kind of add on to what you said there at the end is like if you're bad in the secondary in college, it's like the opposing team having, if it was a war, it'd be like losing air superiority. Like, hey, like our infantry is great, we have great tanks, but man, like our sky is just exposed. Like if they
Yeah,
start dropping bombs, like we're done for. And
yeah,
most teams in college can pass the ball pretty well, especially in this conference. So, yeah, like, I think here's a question for you. Like you've been following this program longer than I have, but even in my experience, going back to you know I think as long as I followed it, we've never had like two good corners at the same time, or like two like like I never felt great about our secondary pretty much in a year. Like it's always oh like we kind of like this guy, we like that guy, but it's kind of it could be a weakness here. And I think even going back to it's something that someone struggled with, that Jimbo struggled with, just getting the caliber of guys. But I think we have the caliber of guys. I mean, Des Ricks, has every physical gift you would want as a cornerback, and even showed those skills. And obviously, Will Lee is great. Julio Humphrey is blazing fast, and he's got great size. Have you seen a good secondary, like like a good secondary at A&M? Like, what's the best secondary you've seen here?
I feel like the last one that I say kind of, at least going into the year, I was super confident in. Gosh, was it 2021? I'm trying to think.
Was it Jones and Jones?
I was just saying, yeah. There's that time we had Jalen Jones. I think we had a very young Tyreek Chappelle.
Yeah,
Yeah, had Antonio Johnson. I think back there at safety.
yeah,
Yeah, it's like there's a time several years ago where I remember going into the year thinking like this might be the best secondary we've had in like 10 or 15 years.
yeah.
And I feel like for the most part that kind of panned out. But yeah, it's like I definitely agree with you that most years it feels like in this fandom you're going in being like, well, I like that one corner,
Yeah.
and the rest of it we will see.
Yeah, I feel like all my A&M fanhood, I'm just scared to death of any team that can pass the ball effectively. I'm just
Yeah,
like Ole Miss. Even the year, like even though we smashed them, like when we played NC State in the bowl game, like they had a good quarterback who I think maybe he opted out, but they had like a quarterback who was good and like a good receiver. I'm like, man, like I don't like that, but
yeah,
um, but no, like I do have a lot of faith in this group, and like even a guy like Ricks, he's a younger guy, but he's in his third year in a college program now, and I think I've kind of talked about this a little bit. I maybe said it here last week and kind of like got into it, but this team is really old, just kind of
yeah,
like really everywhere but receiver, and we just talked about how great we feel about them just with their like KC's a third year guy, but the other guys are all just super talented, and we have to go see them do it. But you know, everywhere else, like it's hard to find a second year or any true freshman that we're counting on. I feel like usually we're like last year we're like, oh, like man, if if Bussey's great, like, oh, like like that's gonna be huge. And now we're like, we don't really need a true freshman to step up and play well, or even any second year
Yeah.
guys. Like most of the depth even at most spots, not all of them, is third year or even older guys. Um, so yeah,
Yeah, and that's something that I think everybody knows, but it's still worth a reminder of that. These are like 18 to 22-year-old kids, and even if you're bringing back the same players, like these guys can take huge leaps, whether it's physically or mentally, um, in just from one season to the next. And so like you can't discount like the role that development can play. Um, and I always go back to that A&M like offensive line from 2019 to 2020, because in 2019 Kellen Mond was just on his back like the entire year.
oh yeah, yeah,
And like that was like the Achilles heel of that team. And then 2020, we went into that year saying, well, yeah, we bring everybody back, but we brought back a bunch of guys who weren't very good
right.
on the offensive line, and they were great, and they all ended up getting drafted. And so and it goes to show you, it's like it's experience matters, cohesion matters, and that's not a universal rule. Certainly, there will be guys who weren't very good last year who, if they're on the field again this year, may still not be very good.
Right.
But it's like, but you absolutely can look at guys and say like, yeah, it's possible that he's gonna take that next step and be a different player than he was a season ago.
Yeah, and I think like that's something that Chase and I would always talk about is, and it was always that example of like, like we always have our preseason like our notions of like, oh, like we think this is our weakness. Well, then it turns out that group's just fine, and it's something else that's the weakness.
Yeah,
But like that offensive line was, and I think we're sitting here and some folks are down on defensive tackle, some are down on the secondary, and kind of in the same vein, there's no reason why they can't uh, take a step up in their play. I mean, especially on the interior, you've got a fifth year guy in Regis, a 6 year guy in Onyedem, or sorry, fifth year guy there. But then Hayes is 24 years old, Deion Hayes.
yeah,
Searcy is a junior. Guys like Scooby Williams and Will Lee are fifth year seniors, and Des Ricks third year guy, Dalton Brooks third year guy, Ratcliffe third year guy. So even like I know the freshman to sophomore is a big jump, but you know there's still room to keep developing, especially like we haven't even mentioned the year two coach jump from
yeah, yeah,
like as good as Texas has been the last 2 years. They went 5-7 in the Big 12 his first year. Now was there's some bad luck, sure, but if we had gone 5-7, bad luck would be damned, and we'd be like, hey, like we got to get this guy out of here,
yeah.
And so yeah, I think and guys like Marcus Freeman too. He lost to Marshall in Stanford his first year, and now they're cooking up there. So
I mean, he lost to. Gosh, I'm blanking on who was I. Who
no,
they lose to the week after us last week? Northern Illinois.
NIU,
Yeah, yeah,
yeah,
yeah. And then they still made the national championship.
yeah,
Um, but no, I do think one thing. Just kind of on that front of like finding out weaknesses and strengths. That's one thing I kind of look forward to this weekend, because certainly the season is never defined by your first game, especially when it's not like a major big time opponent. You're playing a team like UTSA, um, but more and more, and the longer I've watched, I find that every year there are things that like that you see them in the first game, and your tendency is to be like, oh well, it's the first game, they're still working stuff out. Well, we'll get that cleaned up, and then inevitably you look back at the end of the year and you're like, no, like the thing that we struggled with in that first game was kind of the thing that killed us the whole year.
yeah.
And so it's like you're not going to have a 100% clear picture of what this team is going to be after Saturday, but I do think you're going to see things, and it kind of just take a mental inventory of like, these are things that they really did well. These are things that maybe were an issue, because some of those things are going to be the things that are true over the entire schedule.
Yeah, 100%. And like as soon as you said that, I think 2019 offensive line, and I'm like, oh, Texas State was just running exotic blitzes and stuff. Like that's
Yeah.
not. This line's gonna be fine.
They were stumped in every play. What are we gonna do?
Yeah, and then they almost got Kellen hospitalized at Clemson the next week. So
Yeah.
there's obviously things you can take away. I think that that's a great segue into UTSA. You know, I of course I love not having this super tough opponent week one. I love that. Oh, we never do it ever again.
Yeah, it's way too stressful.
Yeah, and I'm pumped to just sit back and watch Notre Dame, Texas, LSU, and Auburn, play
Yeah.
play Power Five teams and see what they do. But it's not a total doormat. Like we're not just gonna. This isn't Prairie View or SFA or Tarleton. Like this is like a legitimately good team, and especially with what you know, I think people are more worried about the defense than the offense. And this is a pretty good offense. They bring back I think 10 of 11 starters.
Yeah.
I was kind of like mulling through the American Conference preseason lists, and they've got their quarterback on one of those teams. They've got I think two receivers are in that mix. The running back is very good. I think his name's Robert Henry, and and four of the five on the offensive line are back. So that's something that is like a pretty, you know, obviously we have a talent advantage, even though they have experience and they're good players. It's still a decent barometer for a first game of like, hey, like, are we
Like they're going to
still
present some challenges for sure.
exactly like, is our defense still blowing assignments and missing tackles? That's going to be a problem. But I think if we go out and dominate, like if they score 3 points or 10 points, like I'm gonna feel pretty dang good about the defense. If they score, and not that we're gonna go be dominant. That's not what I'm saying at all. But yeah, like I'm excited to watch that specifically this weekend. But as far as UTSA goes, is that kind of where you're at too? Like you're focused on the defense. Obviously, want to see the offense and see Marcel and the receivers,
Yeah,
but
yeah, yeah. Because I mean, I would say like if UTSA scores less than 20, I think I'm probably in a pretty good spot there. Just because, like you said, that's they're in like they've had their same coordinators the entire time that Jeff Traylor has been there. They bring back a lot of guys. It was an offense that was pretty good last year. So yeah, all the reasons to think that they're going to be able to throw some stuff at you that catches you off guard. They're going to move the ball and they're going to score some points. As long as you're not just getting gashed.
yeah,
I think we'll be just fine. The other side of the ball gets interesting only because they didn't bring back anybody from that starting 11. And so that's the one that it's almost like the opposite problem that if we don't dominate that
right.
defense, maybe it's cause for concern. And I know Olin on TexAgs, he said many a time that in these early games against the lesser opponents, it's generally the only things you find out are bad things.
Right.
Because all the good things could get proven wrong when you're facing higher competition, but a lot of the bad things are pretty sticky. But that's the only downside of starting the year off with, like I'm not trying to disparage UTSA either. I know it like in the pantheon of like G5 bye games, they're a very respectable opponent.
Oh yeah, yeah.
Yes, I think they're going to be in the top half of the American this year.
They're actually power
So
rated higher than Mississippi State is this year.
yeah, yeah. So like, I'm not trying to say they're just like sisters of the poor out there, but it's not an SEC. Well, it's not an SEC team other than Mississippi State. But the point is that like this should be a team that if you have hopes of challenging for a playoff spot, that you should be able to go out there and dominate relatively easily. So if you don't see that, that could give you maybe some heartburn over the next couple of weeks before you really start finding things out when this team goes to Notre Dame.
Yeah, I think I'm with you on that, and I think it depends on what the bad things are. Like if I think this is a good chance for Marcel and the offense to kind of get into a rhythm against someone that's not their teammates. Like I think the O line should pretty much dominate from start to finish on Saturday. But I'm curious to see like the timing of things. Like, are we, like how sharp are we on offense, and not just like, oh, we made a big play, but like, is the execution there? I know that's a trigger word for Aggie fans, but is like are things just kind of like do we look crisp? Do we look like a team that's got
Yeah.
a million fifth-year seniors on it? Which I think it should look like that. But yeah, I mean it's freaking here. Like we get to
Yeah.
go watch it and see
I
and
know.
be
I was like, I was
be
just
proven right or wrong.
I was just kind of thinking, I was like, and I think like my big takeaway would be is like, yes, we all want to like nitpick everything that's going to happen on Saturday and try to, forecast that forward for what it's going to look like. But it's like, but also take a moment to just appreciate that like you're watching Aggie football again
Yeah,
after so many months of wishing that you were watching it. And so don't let like all of the analytical parts rob you of the joy of like just sit back and just enjoy watching A&M, enjoy watching all these other games that are happening on Saturday, and just kind of just soak it all in because before we know it, it's all going to be over again.
yeah, absolutely. I guess real quick before we get out of here, I've got a couple rapid fire things.
Yeah.
I'll go a little bit outside of A&M, then come back to A&M at the end. But I wrote down is OU trash? I don't know if you saw their depth chart, which like there's some folks I listen to that are pretty high on their defense, and like I think Mateer gets some hype and things like that. But you look at their roster, and I'm like, I don't know a single guy on here.
Yeah.
Like I'm just not real sure if they're going to be able to make it through this season.
I feel like there's a part of me that, once again, it's like, it's not that I'm a contrarian, but I'm just like so willing to acknowledge that like I've been so completely wrong so many times that I'm like, sometimes I was like, well, maybe just the opposite thing is going to happen that everyone is saying.
Right.
Um, because everyone is, well, not everybody. I mean, obviously there's some people that are kind of buying in on them, but yeah, like it's a pretty widely held opinion that OU is going to be bad again this year, that Venables is going to be getting fired, all this stuff. But yeah, I mean, what if they're just good? um, because look, I was like, I don't know their roster. I couldn't tell you more than like three guys on it. But that's not an indictment of the roster. That's an indictment of me. Um, but yeah, I mean, is it year three for that coaching staff now? Is that right?
I think so. Yeah, I
So
think
I mean,
so.
so it's kind of the now or never. Like if it's not happening, if you're not seeing tangible progress now in the transfer portal era,
I
it
think
kind of
this
feels
is.
like
I think it's
that you're not
4
going to see it. Is it really?
because Lincoln Riley left the same year Elko left to
Oh,
go to
well,
Duke.
yeah. And then yeah, this is your for them.
Yeah, because
Goodness.
I think he's already been extended. Maybe.
No, he got extended last
Go,
offseason,
man,
like
that's a whole
last
different
summer.
topic. But I I talked about them last off season as like like one of the more interesting teams just because of who all they play. And I'm like, look, like they're probably not going to make the playoff, but they could, play
That's the
spoiler.
hard part. Yeah,
And
like their schedule is rough, even
guess
if they are good.
guess what they did? They played spoiler. They beat Alabama in like week 11 or 12 and kept them out of the playoffs. So
True.
could happen again. They play LSU, they play Bama, they play Texas, Ole Miss, Tennessee. Like it's tough, but they'll probably lose the fair share of those. But man, I mean, if you get one of those at home, and like if you play LSU at home and knock them off and, and knock them out of playoff contention, I would enjoy that. But it'd also be a big deal for them. Anyone outside of the SEC that you are kind of high on this year? I talked last week. I'm I'm optimistic on Utah. I'm really curious to watch them. I think they could be a team that wins the Big 12. And I like Washington, but is there anyone out there that maybe be a little more off the radar that you're kind of buying in on?
Man, and I don't know how much of this is just because I would just really enjoy it personally, but I'm really in on Georgia Tech.
Okay,
Like, just because yeah, it would be so fun just to get to root for Haynes King and see him kind of come full circle. But I think that's a team that is also very experienced. They brought a lot of guys back from last year, and I think outside of Clemson, I feel like the ACC is pretty wide open, and so it's kind of just begging for someone to be, you know, not great but pretty good, and go in there and and go win a lot of games and end up challenging for the playoff at large spot.
Yeah, I like that one. I mean, obviously another guy that's you talk about experience. He's been
Oh
around
my
the
god,
block,
yeah,
and that's definitely like if you have nothing else, and I'm sure they've got parts of their team they feel good about, and when it's that wide open, you'd rather have a guy that's experienced at quarterback, which that could be a. I mean, heck, last year they beat Miami, which was one of their two losses that kind of kept them out of the playoff.
I mean, and they almost beat Georgia.
Yeah, they did. They sure
Yeah.
did. Which that would have really screwed things up.
Oh my gosh, yeah.
But yeah, so I like that pick a lot. I think we focus too much on the top 5 or 6, and there's so much more out there that I mean, who had Indiana going 11-1, and so I don't know. The playoff gets a lot of hate. I just like the excitement of like anyone can get in there and just have a just kind of go off
Yeah,
one year
yeah.
and have a great year. But
I will say, like, I don't want the playoff to keep expanding because they're talking about 16 teams or however many. I
28
would,
if you're the Big
yeah,
Ten.
I'm not sure how sincere that one was.
Yeah,
But I was like, I would prefer it. Let's keep it at 12 for a while and see how it goes. But I do feel like it's gotten a little bit too much hate because I still prefer this to the 14 playoff. Certainly prefer it to the BCS days, just because I think, do you let in a few teams who probably like don't actually deserve a shot at playing for a national title? Yeah, but what you do is you ensure that everybody who actually looks like they do deserve a shot at a national title gets their shot.
yeah,
There's not going to be any Auburns claiming national championships
yeah,
in the
yeah,
playoff era because they went undefeated but didn't get a chance to play for it.
yeah. And then obviously 2012 A&M, like if they get in there and there's no telling what they could have done in a 12 team field.
Yeah.
There's no way a team like that's getting left out in this kind of model. So and it pairs well with the parity of the sport right now. Like there's not an alpha dog that's just like, I think the preseason odds to win the whole thing are like for the favorite, which I think is Texas and Ohio State. It's like longer odds than it's been in like a long time. So this year to me is so exciting and interesting. Like I love every football season. It's easy to get fired up, and last year was cool with for A&M, new coach, new everything, and the rivalry's back, and then just kind of abroad with the playoff and all the changes. But this year, man, like it's anyone's ball game, and I'll end this on this, and just real quick, which if you want to know what we think, just go read our article about our predictions. But
Yeah.
your official preseason prediction for the 2025 Texas Aggies.
So I did unfortunately predict A&M to go 8-4 again. And look, I will be the first one. I'll be dancing in the streets to be proven wrong on that. But yeah, it's just I do think the schedule, even though it's essentially identical, it's like a mirror version of last year's schedule. But I think you do get some tougher road games. I think a few of those teams that we played last year are just going to be better than they were last year, so they kind of provide a stiffer test. And to be honest, if I'm being fully honest, when I looked at that schedule and everything, I saw 9-3, and then I said, well, if I'm seeing 9-3, then 8-4 is probably the right answer. Um, so that's really where that comes from. Just that I think you either lose all three of those big road games with Notre Dame, LSU, Texas, or even if you win one, I think we've just been so exceptional at finding ways to lose either a really close game that haunts us for years, or just we lose a game that we just had no business losing whatsoever. And that and then you sit there and play that what if game of like, oh, if that had gone differently on that play, then it totally changes your outlook of the season. And it's while it's easy to look backwards and say, oh yeah, it's like it's like those teams weren't as bad as we thought they were. Um, it keeps happening, and at some point you're
Right.
like, maybe I should just assume that's going to keep happening, and then just be delightfully proven wrong whenever I'm
Yeah.
wrong. So that's
Yeah.
where I'm at.
Yeah. No, I it's very difficult for me because I've done it the past years. I've said, hey, like, you know, there's a very clear path to 10-2 on both of those respective schedules. I think there is a path for that on this schedule, but that does not guarantee that it's going to happen. Now, like we said earlier, I think this is a year, where A&M cycles up a little bit and has one of those kind of breakthrough years. Not like in the same vein as 2012 and 2020, to where like, oh, like we're a good football team this year, and like we go and you know beat who we're supposed to, and maybe come up short against some games where we're the underdog. But you know, I I I feel like I'd be lying to myself. Like I sat here last year, I said, hey, I will never pick anything up like over 8-4 ever again until they actually go freaking do it.
Yeah,
Which
yeah,
I will break that promise, but not too bad. My official input into our article was 9-3. I think they do steal one of these road games. I think I'm torn between Notre Dame and LSU. I think both have. I think LSU has some things you can exploit, but it's where it's played. If we didn't have that kind of bear on our back, I would be a little more open to it. But I can't predict that until I see us go win in that stadium. And Notre Dame's really tough. So, but I think this team does kind of break through and get one of those. And I don't know where else they would stumble. I mean, maybe Lagway is just a stud, or maybe Sellers is just Cam Newton, and he just runs all over everybody, and A&M included. But I mean, Arkansas beat Tennessee last year, and they made the playoff, and
yeah,
uh, up there in Fayetteville. So you just don't know. But I think this team can win 10 and get in the playoff. I can't predict it right now. So
yeah. The thing I've kind of said consistently is it is impossible for this team to surprise me this year. Like if we go 11-1, I'll be like, yeah. I mean, it's like you kind of saw the potential for it. That if these guys can come together and develop and just get some injury luck and some maybe bounce a ball luck along the way, or they could go 7-5 and be like, well, yeah. I mean, it's like there were some injuries or they just had some bad turnovers at the wrong time, and that's I mean, and that's and part of that is just the SEC. I feel like you talked about how they're not being like a big bad Alabama in the room nationally. I think that's just as true in the SEC in general, where I think you look at Texas and you say that's kind of the de facto top team, but I think it's like the most unproven top team the SEC has had in quite some time, and I think there's just this massive middle pack that's maybe like 10 teams
yeah,
that we don't know exactly how good each of us are going to be, and how that shakes out is going to prove so much. So it's the difference between the number 3 SEC team and the number 10 SEC team is going to be not all that great.
yeah, and it's fun. It's fun that way. I
Yeah,
love it.
yeah, well, and that is what makes it fun. Like it's not fun
Yeah,
when you're on the losing end of it,
yeah.
but
Oh yeah,
just as a college football fan in general, I agree that that's what makes it interesting because you go into every Saturday, and 80% of the results are going to be exactly what you thought, but there's that 10 to 20% that just throws everything in a blender every
yeah.
week, and that's what keeps us coming back for more.
Man, the week that we beat Missouri, which that game was early, I was there and I got sunburned. I didn't even care because we won so badly, and just freaking dominated them. But then, like, I was just grinning ear to ear watching Alabama go down to Vanderbilt and then
Yeah,
Tennessee go
yeah,
down to Arkansas, and I'm like, man, it's just a great day,
yeah.
And it sucks when it happens to you, which it happened to us down the stretch, but. there's I think it's so much fun. Which you know, in a later date, we'll get into the 9 game conference schedule talk. But I like playing the teams in this conference. It's fun.
Oh yeah.
I like playing Florida and Auburn and Tennessee and uh, you know, obviously Texas, and I'm excited to play Oklahoma again. And
I mean, and just the fact that like in every like rolling 4 year period, you will not only play everybody, you will have gone everywhere to every
yeah,
stadium. That like that's such a huge upgrade because we all talk about, oh, Georgia's never come to A&M and A&M's never gone to Kentucky, and those are kind of the two outlier examples. But I mean, but there's so many other examples of like we've only gone to Georgia once. Kentucky's only come to College Station once.
yeah,
There's it just made no sense to have the conference as big as it was scheduling the way it was. So
yeah,
yeah, it's going to be such a huge upgrade. I mean, just from like the diversity of the teams you see, but also just look like who's going to complain replacing Samford or Utah State with another SEC game.
yeah,
Because like, yeah, it makes your schedule more difficult, but it makes it more difficult across the board. And just as a fan, you get one more game that actually matters where the result is actually in doubt.
yeah, exactly. Um, yeah, I remember being in Georgia in 2019. I'm like, oh, this is great. I can't wait to come back in 12 years.
Yeah, yeah.
At least now it's a little more, a little more.
Maybe it won't be
Uh,
raining that time.
I know, right? Um, but yeah, no, it's fun. It's man, like there's so many games. Like we didn't get to all the games this weekend, which we're not going to because it's already so late. But I'm so excited to just sit back and there's awesome games Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday. Is there a Monday game? I don't
I don't.
I don't,
I don't
I don't
know.
think there is.
Let me look real quick.
But
Um,
still, like you've got like, and not just like throwaway games. Like there's quality games. Uh, like I think Utah and UCLA is tomorrow. No, who is it? Nebraska and Cincy play tomorrow. Baylor Auburn is Friday. Uh, Notre Dame Miami is Sunday. I think Virginia Tech in South Carolina is Sunday as well. And
TCU North Carolina on Monday.
that's Monday. All right. Hey, there you
Yeah.
go. That's
So
hey, the Bill
boom.
Belichick era. You
And
know,
we got two games on Sunday.
is that the Carolina and Virginia Tech?
Yep, South Carolina, Virginia Tech, and then Notre Dame, Miami.
Sweet. Yeah.
So
No,
it's gonna be a great
that's great.
weekend.
Hell yeah. So, um, hope you guys enjoy it. If you made it this far, that means you love it as much as we do. And I hope you guys,
Bless you.
yeah, bless you for sure.
Yeah.
Um, but hope you guys enjoy it. I know I'm going to. Robert, any closing thoughts as we get out of here?
No, man. Yeah, it's just trying to soak it in because it's it's we wait so long for the season to start, and it always feels like it's over in the blink of an eye.
Yeah,
So just try to, whether it's A&M or whether it's all the other games we just talked about, just obviously everyone has other obligations. You probably won't be in front of the TV exclusively from Thursday to Monday, but where you can, just enjoy it. And college football is back.
heck yeah, buddy. Um, well, we're definitely gonna try to get you back on as we go along. Maybe a mid-year check-in. See how right we
Only if we're
were.
good.
Only if we're good.
Yeah.
If we're bad, you're on your own, Will.
Yeah. Yeah. Right.
But yeah, we'll check in, see how right or wrong we were,
Sure.
and see where things are at. But for Robert Behrens, go check out Good Bull Hunting. We will have just bukus of content coming your way each and every day of the week. I'm Will Stone. This is the Ineligible Podcast, and we'll talk to you next week.